He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to the Marlow Show. Got a cool show for you today. I'm going to play for you my speech about Charlie Kirk's views on Israel and where I think the Christian world stands with regards to Israel right now at Pastor Alan Jackson's church from last week. And then on tomorrow's show, I'm going to play for you my speech on the media and about how I think the media and Christianity can work synergistically at this important moment where it does seem like there's this huge demonic presence in the country. So you'll have that for you. But before that, we got a lot of news to get into. We are in an increasingly dark and scary environment here in this country where there is just one after the next incidents of left-wing violence. A lot of the discussion today is starting with this ICE would-be assassin, a person who was camped out trying to kill ICE officers. He apparently was not a very talented shot and ended up shooting and killing at least one illegal alien, it appears. But it is the latest in a rash of leftist violence. In just the last month, John Nolte's put this list together for us. A leftist shot up a Catholic school, leaving 2 dead, including 21 injured, and that was the children as they prayed. The assassination of Charlie Kirk. Then the left blamed MAGA for the assassination. That was Jimmy Kimmel, and he never took it back. Remember that? That was the key. I said this over and over in yesterday's show. Kimmel never said the shooter was not MAGA. He never took it back. Not even did he not apologize. He didn't even retract. They openly celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder on the Blue Sky platform. People in the establishment media downplayed it and ran cover for the assassin by suggesting he was motivated by things that were not his real motivation. And then they defended the mass celebrations. And then after that, a local TV station got shot up for not airing the Kimmel show for a couple of days. There was a wedding where there was a shooting where the shooter screamed "Free Palestine." And then the ICE agents getting targeted for assassination. So there's a left-wing violent culture. We've tracked this for the last decade at Breitbart News, and it's getting worse. And the media not taking it seriously only is going to create that climate of violence. And that's exactly where we are. And you start seeing the media go out of their way to try to portray this rash of left-wing violence as something else that is doing cover for the terrorists. Check out this clip over on MSNBC.
By that, what was written on that shell casing, that's necessarily his motivation. He could have been doing that to thinking it was funny, trying to put law enforcement on the wrong track. This is where, when you analyze the person's phone, computer, talk to his family and friends, that you get an idea of what his motivation perhaps really was.
So you got that? It could have been funny when this would-be assassin put anti-ICE slogans, or at least a slogan, on the bullet casing, on the shell casing, or the shells. What are you supposed to say to that? It could have been a joke. So we're supposed to take the anti-ICE messaging. We're not supposed to take it literally. We're supposed to take it as this was some sort of a joke. And how are we going to figure out the joke? When was this guy who took his own life afterwards, how was he going to explain the joke? And then he had family, this guy who shot up the Texas facility. He had family that said, oh, no, he wasn't really anti-ICE. But the guy clearly was radicalized online. He was looking up videos, Charlie Kirk's assassination. Obviously, where he got the idea to write on the bullets. It's bad. The problem is when these things happen, they tend to beget more. So when things get the critical mass and get all that media attention, it ends up just leading to more of this stuff. And so that's probably what we're gonna see. It's got a lot of people hopping mad though, and I do like this. This is the vice president. Check this out.
And I think that is the most disgusting thing. The very people who keep us safe ought to be honored and protected and praised by Democrats and Republicans alike. It is time to stop the rhetorical assault on law enforcement. Because here's what happens. When Democrats like Gavin Newsom did say that these people are part of an authoritarian government. When the left-wing media lies about what they're doing, when they lie about who they're arresting, when they lie about the actual job of law enforcement, what they're doing is encouraging crazy people to go and commit violence. You don't have to agree with my immigration policies. You don't have to agree with Donald Trump's immigration policies. But if your political rhetoric encourages violence against our law enforcement, you can go straight to hell, and you have no place in the political conversation of the United States of America.
Yeah, I don't know about the go straight to hell. I don't know if that's effective, but other than that, I think the message is great. It's the content is really good, because if you keep calling us Hitler, Nazi, fascist, authoritarian, then people are going to take you seriously. They're going to take you literally, and they're going to take some matters in their own hands. It's going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. It has been happening. Example after example, and now it feels like every other day it's happening. So that's what's going on. So MSNBC talking about how maybe ICE needs to change its policies. Someone named Christopher O'Leary, intelligence analyst. Maybe it's really ICE who provoked it upon themselves. This is all chaos. I wrote about this in Breaking the Law. Is one of the essential things that I wrote. The left hates law and order. They like confusion. That's why they like all the gender stuff. That's why they like to go to bat for the criminals and not the law-abiding, tax-paying citizens and families. I'm reading a story. This is a tweet from a guy named Nick Minnick, who works at a ABC News affiliate in D.C. Check out this tweet. Right now, registered sex offender Richard Cox. That is you're going to see this as quite the pun in a moment. Richard Cox is in an Arlington court hearing where women are testifying that they saw Cox naked in Arlington high school girls' locker rooms, multiples. Cox said he's a woman and asked the judge to tell the prosecutor to stop misgendering him, and the judge said no. One woman testified when she walked in an Arlington girls' high school locker room after swim class for her young daughter, she saw Cox masturbating in a shower stall with the curtain open. She said her young daughter was with her when she saw Cox touching his erect penis. Arlington Public Schools allows people to use locker rooms and bathrooms based on their gender identity. So in Arlington, apparently, Arlington Public Schools, women can have an erect penis. So if you see this guy's picture, and it's there, and I'll retweet this on X, the Everything app, so you guys can see it if you go to the Alex Marlow page. He's obviously a man. He's got a beard stubble. He's got male pattern baldness. This is just very, very much a man. So look, this is what the left protects. They protect the Richard Cox. I mean, how is this not a joke? His name is Richard Cox, and he's been whipping it out. I mean, you feel like it would be a joke. So this guy's got a verified account. He says he claims he works for ABC. If you guys busted me on this, if there's some sort of a joke that Dick Cox whipping his penis out in front of children and then claiming he's a woman, I mean, it's too good to be true, right? So, but people are taking it seriously online. I'm not seeing any community notes on this. So isn't that something that I come in the show and so many things are just stranger than fiction? Very, very disturbing. And it's just nonstop. It's just nonstop that we, it's nonstop that we are going to see the confusion take place, because the left is convinced that if the MAGA movement is for it, then we must be against it. All right. So this brings me to the next story, which is unrelated, but it's also related. So there's been this viral story going around about Violet Affleck, which is Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner's, I think it's a daughter, who was at the United Nations in a mask. And for some reason, this individual, who's a young person who is not a doctor at all, is out there saying that we're still in a pandemic and we should still be masking. At the UN's Healthy Indoor Air session Tuesday, I'm reading from the New York Post, Violet Affleck, just 19, with no qualification beyond being the daughter of the actors Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner, railed about the dangers of airborne viruses and the importance of mask mandates in the ongoing pandemic. So a UN youth activist. And it makes you just hate the UN so much. I mean, the UN is just such a waste of money. It's such a waste of time. Mrs. Dr. Marlow is celebrating her birthday with her mother and her aunt in New York right now. She said she can't get around town because of the UN. And so what's the UN doing? They've got the Ben Affleck's teenage daughter talking about how we need to wear masks. And so I'll tell you how this connects to the trans story. I was wondering if this person is trans because she kind of looks a little trans and I couldn't tell, is this one trans? No, it's their other daughter who's trans. So I think it's Finn Affleck, who was a guy and now was a girl, now is a guy. So that's the one of their three kids. And because when you go to Hollywood, you get the trans contagion. That's what it is. And particularly if you're left-wing people. So all the UN does is create traffic and platform idiots. But the math didn't work to begin with. You guys know that. I didn't need to spend show time on this. But is this not the most the greatest Nepo baby power move you've ever seen? I'm going to get the UN to pay attention to my completely anti-science mask ideas and get a forum for that. Does everyone, can you just call up the UN and get a attention like that? The UN's been credibly accused of triple sabotage with Trump. John Nolte covered this for us at Breitbart. Trump put out a statement calling it a triple sabotage, a sinister act from the UN when they stopped his escalator, which was obvious, and then they broke his teleprompter. What was the third one? And then the third one is, I guess the speech wasn't broadcast properly in the room, so I guess there wasn't cohesion in terms of who could see it, because a lot of people need translators, stuff like that. So clearly there's some foul play there, and we just come to expect it. That's what we come to expect from the UN, is that they're going to be incompetent, they're going to waste a lot of money, they're going to waste a lot of time, and the best thing we can do, the best thing we can get out of it, is we can get Donald Trump dunking on some people. But it's just nonstop nonsense and misinformation and lies. And again, this is what I'm saying. They don't consider truth a left-wing value. They don't consider law and order left-wing value. MSNBC's intelligence analyst Christopher O'Leary calling the ICE shooter. There's not really a clear defensible ideology or motive in the Charlie Kirk assassination. That came up. So he's going through a list of acting as though when we have clear ideologies from people, we can't possibly listen to their own ideologies because that would make the left look bad. And that's the name of the game, is to try to protect themselves. They're circling the wagons here. Kimmel was back out there. Let's see how Kimmel did on his show after not apologizing and not owning up to the obvious mistake, if not deliberate falsehood, that Charlie Kirk's assassin was a MAGA person. Didn't even take it back. Let's see what he did in his show last night.
But here's the thing. For those who think I go too hard on Donald Trump, to the point where there are still a lot of people who think I should be pulled off the air for making fun of Donald Trump. So I want to explain. I talk about Trump more than anything because he's a bully. I don't like bullies. I played the clarinet in high school, okay? So I just don't like him. Donald Trump is an old-fashioned 80s movie-style bully.
Well, this is, as always, the left always does projection. Jimmy Kimmel's a bully. I know he bullies people in his personal life to donate to left-wing causes. And I know that he bullies people out of writers' rooms who don't agree with him on stuff. That he's a definition of a bully. And that's why I guess it takes one to know one in this case. And Trump is actually, I would say he's not a bully. Trump has a wide toolkit, and he will use bullying, but he'll also use buttering people up, complimenting people. So that's one of Trump's, he's not only a bully. Trump just has a wide variety of tools that he uses. And Kimmel can make fun of anyone. The problem is that his show is purely a left-wing Democrat propaganda operation. He elevates left-wing politicians. He has no conservative gas, and all of his jokes make fun of conservatives and make the left look good.
Bully, taking your lunch money. And if you give it to him once, he'll take it again. Two things he loves, lunch and money. Okay? He will take that peanut butter and jelly sandwich your mom cut in half like a triangle for you. He will gobble it up in front of your face, and then he'll...
Should I keep this running so you can see how unfunny this is? It's not fun. And Kimmel's also, he is a fat guy in a skinny guy's body because he used to be on TV. But he'd rather be chowing down right now. How much footage of a chubby Kimmel do we need to roll out?
And then he'll eat your little Ziploc bag of Oreos too. And he'll take the note your mother put in your lunchbox and he'll read it aloud to everyone. Oh, look, mommy loves her widow boy. And then he'll smile with a bunch of cookies in his teeth. And he'll grab you by your nipples and he'll twist them until you have 2 holes in your Latigra shirt because your parents couldn't afford an Izod. And he'll stuff stuff you in a locker, and he'll stomp on your trapper keeper and slam the door. That is Donald Trump. Okay? He does it to everyone. He did it at the UN yesterday.
All right, so that's perfect because you see how unfunny it is. I don't even need to elaborate on it. I mean, there's nothing, I've never heard anything less funny than that in my life. I mean, it's not as funny as the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Matthew Broderick, Civil War movie where everyone dies at the end. Yeah, that's funnier than this. So it's Beaches is funnier. Misty says, no, there's nothing. It's so unfunny. It's painful. But then you see how the audience reaction. What did they do at the end, Misty? Did they laugh or what'd they do? They applauded. They applauded. That's how you know he's got nothing. That's how you know he's got nothing. They're clapping at the end. Like his ratings are just going to go down again. It's going to be great to watch. And then we're going to have a whole news cycle. Kimmel ratings clap. So let him get the sugar high of getting the good ratings for now. It's fun. So I said it's a win-win, and that's great. Speaking of the UN, he was going to bring up the UN. A lot of the UN focus has shifted to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Islamist leader of Turkey, which is also a NATO ally, making it a complicated relationship. A big negotiation taking place. So Erdogan is one to get these F-35 Joint Strike Fighters, and he's been wanting them for decades. And he feels like he might have a path to get them. He's won these pretty much since 9/11, I think, is when he wanted it. And because U.S. launching a really big expansion of some of our fighters, and Turkey's want to get their hands on them for a number of reasons, but we don't know exactly what, so we've been reluctant to sell them to them because potentially if we ever had a war with Turkey, that these would be ones where potentially could be effective against some of America's arsenal. And I think that's been sort of the more cynical version of why perhaps Turkey could want it, is that if he ended up having to fight with NATO forces and with the U.S., then these could be particularly potent against them. But one of the things that's been a big topic of discussion is Trump is pressuring Turkey to stop buying oil from Russia because Turkey is helping to fund the war in Ukraine because Putin's not backing down, and Turkey is a big buyer of Russian oil. So this negotiation is ongoing, and Trump was roasting Erdogan, which I thought was pretty funny. Check this clip out that we pulled.
Of Turkey.
Unfairly, as it turns out. Rigged election, he knows about rigged elections better than anybody. But when I was in exile, we were still friends. That's always a good way to find out, test of friendship. But
so he's saying, making fun of Erdogan, who definitely was benefited from a rigged election last time around. And Trump just roasting him to his face. Trump really does feel like he's in a power position here because he's very aggressive. Erdogan seems like a nut to me. And Trump was just a lot of backhanded compliments in this interaction. But overall, I think this negotiation is taking place so that he could end up getting some high-powered fighters from us in exchange for stopping to buy Russian oil. So I'm wondering how that's going to turn out, but we'll have up-to-the-minute reporting for you at Breitbart News on that one as well. One other international item I wanted to bring up with you is former French President Sarkozy. He is going to jail for 5 years in a corruption charge. Really interesting stuff. Not someone who I think we're aligned with politically, but former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. He's claimed he's innocent, and he's claimed this has been a political motivated lawfare conspiracy trial that was revenge on him, and is a huge excessive force by the French state try to get him out. But overall, it's basically circumstantial evidence or no evidence at all of what he's being accused of, which is working with the Libyan government and Muammar Gaddafi to basically have his 2007 presidential election campaign funded. But the problem is there's not actually any proof that any money changed hands. So it was determined by the French courts. They felt satisfied that there was an attempt to get money from Libya that had taken place, and that's why he's going to jail for 5 years. But he never actually got any money. And I got to say, I'm not a Sarkozy fan per se, but that does seem like all the hallmarks of lawfare. And so let's not forget that lawfare is a tool that is not just here in the United States. It's something that does take place around the world. We've talked about this quite a bit in the context of Brazil and how they've used lawfare to get Bolsonaro. It is game on with lawfare, and it's just important to note that this is a prominent tactic that you're seeing, and you're going to see it, and you're going to continue to see it. All right, other big item. This is the fun one. James Comey apparently could get indicted by, I think it's Tuesday. He got the statute of limitations on some lies coming up. I'm trying to figure out what lie could have been the one where they could get him, because we don't have a ton of detail, just a lot of buzz in Washington that there could be a Comey indictment. Here's some of the potential lies. Here's one of them.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts. And it was an active measures campaign driven from the top of that government. There is no fuzz on that. It is a high confidence judgment of the entire intelligence community. And the members of this committee have seen the intelligence. It's not a close call. That happened. That's about as unfake as you can possibly get, and is very, very serious, which is why it's so refreshing to see.
Comey's a big liar, and he's a really deceitful guy, and he's also very sloppy. So him saying there's no fuzz on, I don't know what that means. Russia definitely rigged the election. It is all this is completely dishonest. But, you know, there was a moment in Breaking the Law that I think is really important with Comey, where he was trying to shop a story of Russian collusion to the media to try to induce a special counsel into Donald Trump for Russian collusion. So this is a really important thing. This is from the book. This is page 142. Former FBI Director Comey leaked records of his interactions with Trump in order to gin up the phony Russiagate controversy. He disclosed a memo to his friend Daniel Richman, a professor at Columbia Law School, with a plan to have him share it with the New York Times. Comey's intention was to prompt a special counsel investigation into Trump's supposed ties to Russia. So this is crucial because he's been trying to foment the Russian collusion hoax from the start, and he's been willing to use dishonest tactics to do it. And this speech, of course, is just start to finish. I don't know exactly where this was, but this is every word of it is not true. So the question is, was he deliberately lying? And that is, you know, perhaps illegal. Let's check it out. Let's hear some more.
A bipartisan focus on that, because this is about America, not about any particular party.
So that was a hostile act by the Russian government against this country.
Yes, sir.
In that time frame, there were more than the DNC and the DCCC that were targets.
Correct. There was a massive effort to target government and non-governmental, near-governmental agencies like nonprofits.
What would be the estimate of how many entities out there the Russians specifically targeted in that time frame?
It's hundreds. I suppose it could be more than 1,000, but it's at least hundreds.
He's not just a cable news goofball. This guy led the FBI. He was the FBI director. So it's really bad. It's really bad stuff. And I just don't understand how they could have come at Trump so hard for so much less. And they came at him 6 times, as I document in the book. And so why wouldn't this be so much worse, anything they got Trump doing? He's clearly lying in order to try to get a president disqualified from being the president. That was the whole goal of all this. All right, I got one more clip. Was this the lie?
Do you stand by your House testimony of March 20th that there was no surveillance of the Trump campaign that you're aware of?
Correct.
You would know about it if they were. Is that correct?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Trump campaign was surveilled. We documented this at Breitbart News. We were really wrapped up in this. I think this goes back to my 2016 Trump campaign was surveilled for sure. And it was, we documented this at Breitbart. We won the first report on it, and it was very controversial, and we got a lot of heat for it. And then it turned out we were totally right about it. And Comey's supposed to know this stuff that's going on as leader of the FBI, director of the FBI. So, all right, well, I hope they get him. Stephen Miller talked about it more in broad terms, but anytime we have an excuse to play Miller, we take it here on the Marlow Show. So here's Miller and Laura Ingraham talking about exactly this.
Stephen, I want to move on to this news that the DOJ is considering indicting former FBI Director James Comey for allegedly lying to Congress. Your reaction tonight?
Well, I don't have any news to make on that subject or question, but I'm always happy to talk about disgraced former FBI Director James Comey, who, of course, is corrupt, who, of course, has been engaged in vast amounts of illicit and unlawful conduct, who, of course, was at the center of the Russiagate attack and assault on American democracy. There are so many people, Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Monaco, all across the government, under previous administrations who have worked tirelessly to try to dismantle our democracy. And it has to lead somewhere to accountability.
Got to be accountability. And in 2017.
Yeah, and he's naming some good names. Lisa Monaco is one of the supervillains of breaking the law. I think she was the person who really was politicizing the DOJ more than anyone else. That was Trump's impression when I interviewed Trump a couple times in the subject matter. So I would love to see it. Comey definitely deserves it, and I think he could be a low-hanging fruit, even though maybe I don't know if he's as evil of a guy. In fact, I bet if we talked to him, he wouldn't be. I think he's more of a misguided guy than a Clapper or a Brennan. But I just think he's just not that bright. And I think that's why you might be able to get him, because he might have been sloppier and stupider than some of the others, as I noted in Breaking the Law, with that example of just clearly leaking to try to get the special counsel going via his friend, the Columbia professor. All right, a few other items in the news. We're keeping an eye on this. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has called a rare and urgent meeting of hundreds of generals and admirals. I think 800 in all. Doesn't sound good. We don't have a lot of details on it, but obviously people are alarmed about it. So you could tune into Breitbart.com for more. I'll try to bring you more on the show. Thousands have signed a petition to remove the judge who released the suspect in Irina Zuritska's stabbing. That's the Ukrainian refugee who was stabbed in North Carolina. Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes. 11,000 signatures following the fatal stabbing. The effort is being led by Pat Harrigan, a congressperson from North Carolina. And the person, DeCarlos Brown, he's the guy with the appears to be the guy who stabbed her in the neck with a knife multiple times. He had 14 prior convictions. And I don't see how a judge can remain in good standing after this. Once you cost someone's life, it's the same way. I'm not all worked up about the New York political situation, because if the alternative to Mamdani is Andrew Cuomo, who I think disqualified himself with those nursing home policies, the number one rule you got to have in the government is don't do harm. And if you're letting criminals out in the streets commit murders, if you're having policies that get senior citizens killed, then you don't get to keep your job. You need to be able to be fired. In the private sector, of course, you would get fired for this stuff. All right. GDP grew at a faster than expected rate. John Carney has a write-up for us at Breitbart News on this, and I think this is really interesting. GDP grew at a faster rate than expected, 3.8%. Again, everyone is always underestimating the economy here. This is how the government measures economic output with GDP. 3.8% annual rate from April to June. This is and this compares to a prior year, 3.3. So adjusted for seasonality, not inflation, the economy increased at a 6% pace. So 6% if you don't even include the inflation on it. So economists had expected no change. Instead, the updated data showed firmer household demand. Consumer spending rose at 2.5% rate, up from the previous reported 1.6%. Final sales to private domestic purchasers, a key gauge of underlying demand, advanced 2.9%, which is sharply higher than the earlier 1.9% reading. Home sales are going up too. I mean, we're seeing some decent economic numbers. But then we saw something that Starbucks is now laying off 900 employees, closing 500 stores in a $1 billion restructuring. I'm curious about this because I feel like the Starbucks is sort of a waste of money. So I'm wondering if people are cutting out the Starbucks, maybe it's because they're tightening the belt to some degree. So maybe that doesn't bode well. But also Starbucks is so oversaturated. I was thinking about my neighborhood, how there's a Starbucks at the bottom of the hill that I live on, and that's the closest coffee shop to me. And the second closest coffee shop to me is a Starbucks that's inside a supermarket. And then the third closest is a Starbucks that is in the same mini mall as the supermarket with the Starbucks in it. So Colin Medine, our tech editor at Breitbart, was joking, next we're going to have a Starbucks with the Starbucks in it. So I just feel like there's a lot of these things, and it's just a so-so cup of coffee. I won't act like it's terrible. It's not terrible. It's just not... it's not a great cup of coffee, and it's the same price as a fancy cup of coffee somewhere with, some artisanal beans. And what they're doing now? They're doing this thing in my neighborhood. They're doing this thing called the Cloud Top, which is basically just a whipped cream, a little bit of flavoring in it. And I think that's great because I like the heavy cream. I can't do a lot of sugar. So I can't do a pump of syrup. That's disgusting to me. And some of these Starbucks recipes have like 17 pumps of syrup. I can't do any of that. But you put a little bit in the whipped cream, let it on top. You can kind of have a little bit or not, by sip to sip. That's nice. I like that. And that's the hot trend that's going on. So any of you in the coffee game, I highly recommend. So that's out there, and I don't know if you got to read on it, aloha@alexmarlow.com. I'm not going to be overly alarmed yet, but it does seem like a big restructuring for maybe the most ubiquitous American consumable store other than McDonald's. I mean, 1 and 2, right? I mean, I wonder what is more. I got to look that up. I should have that. I should know what is the biggest consumer food or drink brand where you can just go into a branded store and get some stuff. All right. I think we'll leave it there for now. There's tons of more news. I mean, I'm tempted to talk about this Jessica Chastain show on Apple TV called The Savant, where she's investigating a radicalization online, and they just coincidentally pulled it after Charlie Kirk's assassination. It makes you wonder if the bad guy was really a Charlie Kirk-like figure in that. But I think we'll leave it there. So what I'm going to do now is, as noted, I'm going to play my speech that I gave on Christianity in Israel today. And in particular, I break down what I know to be a lot of Charlie Kirk's views on Israel. And I'll offer this brief caveat before we start. I'm sure Charlie had pushy donors. I am almost positive he had very pro-Israel donors who did not want him to platform certain people. I never talked to Charlie about that. I'm just using my logical brain. I'm sure of all the donors he had, some of them didn't like some of the stuff that a Tucker Carlson or maybe a Dave Smith would say on his stage about Israel. But Charlie was a free speech guy, but he was also a pro-Israel guy. And I think he was doing his best to balance both, and he was doing it pretty effectively overall. But I talked to Charlie a lot about Israel, including a day-to-day at a certain level via this group chat that I talk about in the speech. So I think I like to share these because a lot of work goes into these speeches. I think it's fun for you, the audience, hopefully, to see me in these settings. So if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, you can see the optics of it. It's a huge congregation. It's a big room. It's a big church. And it's really fun. So, and then I'll have my media speech for you on tomorrow's show. But that's it. This is my speech at Pastor Alan Jackson's church on Charlie Kirk, Israel, Christianity. And thanks to Misty, and thanks to all of you in the audience.
Attention investors with a 401k, IRA, or retirement account. The dollar has lost over 25% of its value in the past 5 years, and it's only going to get worse. Are you prepared for what's about to happen next? We are Advantage Gold, the #1 customer-rated gold IRA company in America, and we are helping Americans prepare for the great de-dollarization by diversifying their portfolios with physical precious metals. We've partnered with former chief economist of the IMF, Kenneth Rogoff, to give away his latest book called Our Dollar, Your Problem, a must-read for investors. Call 800-741-GOLD, and we'll rush a free copy of Our Dollar, Your Problem to your doorstep, and include our special gold IRA investing kit, valued at $49. The dollar is losing value fast. Call 800-741-GOLD now to get your free copy of Our Dollar, Your Problem, and our free gold IRA investing kit. Supplies are limited. Consult your tax and financial professional before investing. Call 800-741-4653. That's 800-741-GOLD.
Good morning, church. So the pastor's a little dishonest when he talks about the humble country church, right? So that's a joke. I just came from LA last night, so this is new to me. Well, it is wonderful to be with you, and I've befriended the pastor over the last 6 months to a year, appearing frequently on his show. He's been very kind to promote a lot of my work at Breitbart News and my writings and my podcasting. And the #1 reason I'm here is because he's a wonderful man, and it's really nice to be in his presence and to do something nice for the pastor that's also enriching for me. And it's so great to meet some of you, and I'm hoping to do that later. The next reason why I'm here today is because I do genuinely believe there is a demonic, satanic presence in this country that's ever more prevalent. It's ever more presenting itself to vulnerable people, and it's only through community and through the church itself where we are going to be able to push that out of our lives and let God fill the void. I think that's essential, and that's something that I want to be a part of today. The last reason why I'm here, and this is the most important one really, is to celebrate and discuss my good friend Charlie Kirk. Charlie was supposed to be here, and he and I were close friends. I'll tell you, Charlie got his start in politics and media writing for me at Breitbart News. This started when he was a teenager. Just humble kid from Chicago. He'd identified some bias in some textbooks. And he had decided that he wanted to report on it. He wanted to get the word out about it. And so he pitched us at Breitbart News, and me and my colleague Joel Pollack, we got the pitch, and we thought, well, you should just write it up yourself. You should be the citizen journalist that Andrew Breitbart wanted. And Charlie said, that's a great idea. And Charlie got lightning in a bottle. He was on Fox News, he was everywhere. I think it foretold the legacy that he would lead. He immediately struck gold. He was everywhere, everyone loved him, and he used it to take what was just a small kernel, which was Turning Point, and turn it into something cool. And when he did that, it started to grow slowly, really slowly at first. I think maybe even at the beginning, he was thinking maybe this is something that was making some of the supporters feel better than some of the students. I think he was kind of talking maybe to some people who are a little older, not necessarily the younger crowd. But eventually it did start to grow, and I did what any smart mogul media personality would do, is I tried to hire Charlie. And he said, this Turning Point thing is, I think it's just big enough. This is maybe 2014. I said, it's just big enough, I want to see it through. And it was a great choice for him, because he turned Turning Point into what is the biggest grassroots organization on the right that we have, period. And he did it not just by talking about politics, he did it by talking about faith and the interconnectivity between America's politics, that our exceptionalism does not come from man. American exceptionalism comes from God himself. Charlie understood this. He understood it was not a coincidence that the founding fathers were walking the earth at the same time, at the same moment, in the same geographic location, God-fearing and thinking how to take those values and create the greatest founding principles, founding documents of any nation on earth. He saw that very clearly, and that somehow had gotten out of our culture, and he was a warrior for that. And my last chat with Charlie was on his radio show the Monday before he died. He ended the segment 5 minutes earlier than usual. Normally I get about a half an hour with him, but he cut me off 5 minutes earlier, which I thought, well, I guess I didn't bring the heat today. I don't know, maybe it wasn't my best day. We would speak about once a week on his show, which was an honor. And he actually wanted to just go on a rant. He wanted to opine. He wanted to opine specifically on that young liberal women would be happier if they got married and had children. So this wasn't some sort of grandiose political statement. He wasn't talking about some bill that's come through Congress. He said, I'm going to let Marlow run here because I want to talk about how men have a God-given direction to start a family. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that a wonderful message? But what's interesting and apropos today, because I'm starting off the Israel section of the day, and I'll be back for the media section as well, so hopefully all of you are here all night. My last chat with him was actually supposed to be on Zoom the night before he died. Charlie and I were in a group chat. It's not very big, maybe 10 or so people. People that Charlie trusts specifically on the topic of Israel. And you're gonna get a kick out of what the group chat is called. It's called Saving Civilization. So a little grandiose, right? And when Charlie started it, and he included me in it, I was thinking, that's funny. But knowing Charlie, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't a joke at all. Maybe it was him being literal. And it was an honor to be included in it. But the night before he was murdered, we were on the chat on this Zoom call. I unfortunately was not on it because I was at swim team trying to be a good dad, which is ironic given the previous conversations. But I wish I'd been there at least to talk to my friend one last time. But what was interesting is that the subject of what would have been my last call with Charlie was actually to prepare for hostile questions about Israel on campus. And the way the call ended, according to one of my friends who's on the call, he said the final sentiment of the call was, these are the pillars to save Western civilization: Jews, Christians, America, and Israel. And he said Charlie immediately reacted with an affirmation. Exactly, that's what it is. So since his assassination, a lot of anti-Israel voices have claimed that he turned on Israel, but it's just not so. He's one of its staunchest defenders in my generation. I'm reading some quotes. I'm very pro-Israel. My whole life I have defended Israel. He said this recently. And no non-Jewish person my age has a longer or clearer record of support for Israel than I do. And let me just say this, the night before he died, he was preparing to defend the Jewish state in his final hours. This is why you saw rabbis weep for him when he died. But he did have this unenviable task of trying to unite factions of a movement, the MAGA movement, that's increasingly skeptical of Israel. So your mind probably goes to the obvious place. What's changed? Have things changed? Why do things feel more divided? Israel's a lone Jewish state on earth. It's got biblical roots, Middle East lone democracy. It's thriving industry, culture, whereas most of its neighbors have been overwhelmed by barbarism, Islamism, things we kind of all agree are not great. So the details of October 7th, these are not unfamiliar to you. Israel invaded, families burned alive, hostages taken. Maybe some of the original claims were exaggerated, but what's known for sure is certainly bad enough to merit a robust response. So things were bad enough that what Israel decided to do was actually take the war to completion. And I think this is one of the things that changed. When you see a state like Hamas that believes that Israel does not have a right to exist, then after the events of October 7th, it was clear to Israel that we cannot coexist next to this group of people. We can't do it anymore. So Netanyahu sees that, he's a fighter, but what he's doing that's different is that he's trying to fight the war to completion. I say this, I judge it positively, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to clarify what's going on. He's fighting a war to victory, and we're not used to this. That's one thing that's changed. We're in the late stage of a war. We're accustomed to fighting wars to ceasefires. That's how Western countries have done it since Hiroshima. For some reason, we're uncomfortable seeing a war to victory. Maybe victory feels worse in some way. I don't know. I've never witnessed one. I'm just about to turn 40, so I've never seen us win one. So, but after October 7th, after the invasions, after the kidnapping, Israel says, no, we're not going to live next to Hamas anymore. We're going to defeat them. Hamas wants Muslim control over everything, and that includes Israel. So how do you even have a ceasefire with such a group? So the world does hate watching this, though. And that's why Netanyahu has become aware of this. He said this recently, I don't want stories that we have been beaten by our enemies for us to be eulogized well in the global media. I agree completely. Even Trump himself hates this. You know, I wrote extensively about Joe Biden. It was part of my research. The proverbial, I did the research so you don't have to sort of situation. Spending a year and a half reading about Joe Biden. But that October 7th, I put squarely on Joe Biden's feet. I do. It was his weakness towards Israel, the worst ally possible. And he staffed his administration with Hamas sympathizers. After Hamas attacked Israel, the United States Office for Palestinian Affairs under Biden called for Israelis to refrain from violence and retaliatory attacks. That was the Biden administration's response. Not to mention he abandoned those weapons in Afghanistan that could have easily ended up in the hands of Hamas. So Trump doesn't want anything to do with this. This is a mess that Biden made. He doesn't want to spend time cleaning it up. And it's brutal. And we're not accustomed to seeing all this play out on the internet in the graphic detail the way we are. So with the best point I can make here is that while Israel's on the front lines against Sharia supremacy, which is coming, you can see it throughout Europe. You guys saw this week that now in Dearborn, which is in America, by the way, contrary to what some people might think, they're trying to name a street after a terrorist supporting newspaper publisher in the United States. This would be a five-alarm fire 20 years ago in this country. But for now, it's just one line in a newspaper or on a website like mine. Charlie was aware of the Islamist threat. He had this tweet, I'm going to read it to you. It was viewed 67 million times on X. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. 67 million. So, what are the best arguments against it? In Islamic supremacist regimes, women are oppressed, gays are executed, sexual violence is the norm, freedom is non-existent for most and very limited for everyone else. And we know what Charlie thought about freedom. What's more, Hamas is playing games with food aid. They're starving hostages and even some of their own people. Why are they doing this? Because it creates a global PR crisis for Israel. And it's effective. Given the media, given the global media, Hamas using their own people as human shields, storing weapons in schools, storing weapons in hospitals, effectively creating a genocide against their own people is asymmetric warfare because of the global press, because of the nature of energy online. They understand that all of it somehow creates pressure on Israel. It's Israel that drops food and leaflets to warn Palestinians when bombs are coming. It's Israel that posts evacuation maps. No one fights wars like this. They actually feed their enemies. They warn civilians of attacks, and they will even treat terrorists in hospitals. You contrast that with October 7th, and it's pretty clear which one's on the morally righteous side. But for me, a top argument as a Christian for why I support Israel and why I want Israel to win this war comes in the form of a question. I'll ask it to all of you, get your reaction. Who would you prefer have control of the Holy Land? The Islamists or Israel? We have an example here. It's Bethlehem, 6 miles from Jerusalem in the West Bank, and before the Oslo Accords, Israel ran Bethlehem. It doesn't anymore. Now it's a fearful place, economically depressed and not welcoming for Christians. Now picture if Islamists run the whole Holy Land. You don't want to picture that way. They're wonderful stewards of our Holy Land. And that's important. It's essential as Christians. But there's one other thing that's changed in our dialogue is Americans have stopped trusting everything. And I understand it. The mass paranoia over Israel has gone on for decades, centuries even. But I really do believe this last round, believe it or not, actually can trace it to the pandemic, where we got all collective whiplash from all the disinformation from authorities, and we stopped trusting any establishment. Now, I'm editor-in-chief of Breitbart, so I'm sort of an anti-establishment type guy. I've kind of gone up against the establishment for a while. But the establishment isn't always wrong all the time. And Netanyahu is the establishment. Israel is the establishment. And so there is an information war online that's taking place, where people think that, well, if it's the establishment, they must be the liars, they must be the cheats, they must be the ones who are covering up and blackmailing, and that's what they're doing. And so I'll tell you Charlie's number one gripe with Israel, and I think this is the important one, and this is the one to understand some of the fractional nature of what's happening in an online conservative dialogue right now. His main beef with them was clear. He believed Israel was failing in the PR war. They were letting their harshest critics control the narrative, and they still are. He argued Benjamin Netanyahu himself, he argued this to Benjamin Netanyahu himself. He wrote him a thoughtful letter about it. He told the prime minister he needed a rapid response team so that Israel's supporters could be armed with some of the data and some of the arguments, some of the things that I laid out today, plus more detail even, so that they can combat the online barrage of hatred against Israel and Jews. He called on Israel to explain that it is the only pluralistic society in the Middle East, that it is the free country with elected leaders, unlike all the surrounding authoritarianism. He called on Israel to explain itself, that it has the hospitals that take care of the terrorists. Why not show clips of dropping flyers, dropping leaflets? There's even this thing called knocking, where you actually drop a dummy bomb on top of a building to warn people it's time to get out, it's time to evacuate. Let's get some fresh spokespeople out there to start explaining this to the world on your own behalf. That's what Charlie wanted. And I don't know if he was right. I don't know. I don't know if Israel can win the PR war until they win the literal war, and they have to win the literal war. But I do like the sentiment. So I don't have too much time left, so I should probably address the prompt that I was asked to cover. I was asked to, it's the very end of the speech. It's a privilege to speak to all of you, I must say. The prompt I was asked to cover is support for Israel. How far is too far? That was the question. It's simple. My colleague Joel Pollack laid it out beautifully for me. He covers Israel for us at Breitbart News. Israel should solve all of its problems that it can on its own, and we will be there to help with the rest so long as there's something in it for us. Simple. Israel does its own fighting, but we sell it some weapons. They also develop weapons that we use. We use that port in Haifa. We trade military tech. They improve our fighters. They teach us things. Think about how Silicon Valley has branches in Tel Aviv. Almost half of the major companies do. That's not a coincidence. But for foreign aid, there must be foreign aid only when it's in America's national interest. We're not contributing to their welfare state. We're not paying for their failing universal socialist healthcare system. We're not doing that. Not a penny of American money can go to that. It's not even working, so of course not. But our alliance can be potent. There's so much evidence of this. Think about the recent attacks on Iran, where Israel softened the target for us. We come in, devastating, swift attack on Iran nuclear facilities. American forces delivering a devastating blow, clean as a whistle. That's the type of stuff that we can do in our partnership, so long as we're meticulous and we hold them to account as well. Charlie pointed out something profound in his correspondence with Netanyahu, which he had quite a bit of in the last year. How could a nation be so brilliant to organize the beeper bomb operation, the most unbelievable attack you've ever seen in your life, but incompetent on online PR? That's not acceptable, and they can do better, and we want them to do better. They have to be better on that front, because so long as Israel is the beacon of pluralism and freedom, these are the essential Western values. So long as they're the best possible stewards of the holy sites, and they are. And so long as Islamism is a threat to the West, I, as a Christian, will continue to advocate for the people of the Jewish faith and the well-being and longevity of Israel. Thank you.